welcome to CyberCast, the podcast where we break down tech and latest web technologies. I am Ashmul, product marketing manager in CyberPanel. I have my co-host join with me, Hasid. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for introduction. Hello, Max. How are you? My name is Hassan Bibtikar, and I'm working as growth and content strategist at CyberPanel.
I see. I'm very well, thanks. And thank you very much for inviting me on to talk about PHP Vitals.
Yep, absolutely right. So today we are talking about PHP Vitals, why they really matters, and actually a lot of hosting companies ignores them. So we will be drilling down and make it more exciting. Um, uh, you know, the more we will try to grab the insightful information from Max. Max, I would like you to introduce yourself towards our audience. What's your background and what kind of stuff you're up to these days? So please introduce yourself.
Sure thing. My name is Max Johns. I am based in New Zealand, where I was born as well. I first met Ashmal in Pakistan, though, where we were colleagues for a while over at Cloudways, which was 2 of the 7 years I've spent working in web hosting. Today, the company I work for is WebSlice, which is a recently launched brand. We have containerized and also serverless hosting, both of which we like to see used by PHP developers in particular. That's a part of the internet that we think is sometimes underserved by the coolest and latest stuff. And if we can get the basic infrastructure of the internet as it is today, what people are actually building and working as well as it can, then pretty much everyone around the world wins, right?
No, right on the money. Lovely. So let's kick this off officially. So just wanted to know, just to elaborate, what is PHP Vitals to the beginner? Because a lot of people already know who are into this podcast. So can you explain what is PHP Vitals from the scratch, and why does it really matter for the web applications like WordPress or someone who's building around the CMS?
So PHP Vitals to us, it's a really important aspect of website performance, but it's one that hasn't always been easy for developers to separate out and analyze. So when we talk about PHP Vitals, we are talking about how quickly your server deals with PHP throughput in particular. And obviously, the faster your PHP Vitals are being run, the faster your entire website's going to run as well. What we see often is people focusing on things like core web vitals, which are also really important, and optimizing their code and working with plugins and themes and file sizes to improve that side of website performance. We want to make hardware equally easy to analyze and to find out, are you being restrained by your server rather than this work that you're doing, getting a better performance out of that same server. So what we've done is created a WordPress plugin that runs 29 different PHP benchmarks. It happens in roughly 1 or 2 minutes, tells you the breakdown of each of those vital jobs that your server can do, and then also grades your server against hundreds of others around the world that have also been tested, so that you can see where your hardware, where your infrastructure sits. And therefore, with all that cool development work you're doing, what constraints you're operating within, or whether you're on some of the best hardware in the world and you're free to try to get some of the fastest websites in the world running as well. So PHP Vitals is currently a WordPress plugin. We're looking at other ways we can make it easy for developers to run the same suite of tests and compare their servers to others. On our website, phpvitals.com, we have a leaderboard where any test run can be submitted. It doesn't matter who your host is, which part of the world it's in, or anything like that. So you can see what is happening out there in the world of PHP, how fast servers are performing, and whether you are running well in the race, or if you've got the problem that you need to solve at the PHP level before you get on to all that great work as a web developer.
I'm really surprised with the numbers, and we will be really talking about like the plugin you guys have developed under this category, right? So we were discussing about that plugin and how to use it and what kind of benchmark you can perform with that. So Max, just wanted to know, because we like for last 5 to 10, like 5 years, like if we just go back to 5 years later, and then we talk about a lot about core web vitals, right?
Yes.
So when we talk about core web vitals and then PHP vitals comes in, like what kind of difference it like these two parameters contain and the performance, like why this conversation comes into it.
Sure. So when you assess your core web vitals, those three really important numbers that Google cares about deeply, and so therefore we all care about very deeply, you're looking at, for example, how fast your largest content plateful comes through. Let's take that as an example out of the three, right? That's a website performance metric. It tells you how fast your website's going to appear to anyone who visits it. That's crucial. What PHP Vitals measures is how fast the hardware and the infrastructure is working to help get that largest content plateful through. So if there's that much stuff that goes into your core web vitals, then you're finding out how much of that time is your server taking, how much of it, how much of the improvement that's available to you, or how much improvement is available to you, depending on how quick your server is. And we know that developers put a heap of effort into following those core web vitals, and we know that there are millions of tutorials out there for all these different optimization techniques you can use. People will analyze plugins and themes and all these other things to make sure there's no bloat. What we're saying is don't forget about your hardware. And sometimes it can be easy to forget about that because it's a little bit beyond your control. It might be something that works well and you haven't thought about your VPS for the last 3 years or something. Other people have been thinking about their VPSs and they have been upgrading. So even if you've still got that really slick optimized code on top of it, if you've been left behind in the hardware space, you're going to find that your core web vitals aren't ranking so well. So yeah, core web vitals, super, super important. But the contribution of your infrastructure to how quickly things happen when you're measuring those core web vitals, equally important.
Right on the money, because because we at CyberPanel talks about VPS, and we offer VPS, right? And lately we have seen on our Facebook community that people talks about VPS performance, and I think I'm 100% sure that the tool that you guys have developed would be the right fit for our audience as well. Like they can test the performance. I am, and I'm pretty sure because there are two sides of the performance benchmark. One is on the software side, and then the hardware side, which is like when you drill down into the more hardcore level for server performance and visibility. Absolutely. So along with that, like follow up question with that thing. So do you agree with this? Like, this PHP writers comes really handy when it comes to the SEO or the conversation level part for the just creating the funnel for the users. Does this really help in that matter? Like for the digital marketers like us. So, what do you think?
Abs and that's because PHP Vitals tells you about those things that contribute to your core web vitals. And we know that slower websites have poorer SEO rankings and they have poorer user experience. We know that if your shop isn't loading fast enough online, that people will abandon the checkout, all those things, right? So knowing whether the hardware that you're running on is helping or is hindering when you're trying to get your websites running as fast as possible. That's what PHP Vitals can tell you. One of the things we really like to see is when people are running tests on a regular schedule, maybe every week or every month, so they can see over time whether anything's changing in their hardware as well or in their VPS. We know that hosts might shift your VM from one physical server to another, or the number of noisy neighbors that you've got might change over time as well. So just like anything else that contribute to core web vitals, these are things you need to keep on top of and keep looking at over time. If you find out your server's fast in 2022 and you think that's a tick, I'll go and do all my other SEO work now, then you're going to find that that SEO work stops paying off. So yeah, it's super, super important to understand your PHP vitals, where they are now, where they've come from, and how they're trending if you want to stay on top of that really competitive space that your websites are trying to rank well for.
So just wanted to clarify that that part, like maybe most of the newbies or non-tech users might understand like PHP Fighter won't be efficient for the for the uh, specific website performance, but have you explained very in a manner that everybody could understand like why PHP Fighter is really important in order to check have a clear check on your SEO conversion part and creating the best marketing strategy, right? So in order to get the numbers, right,
You do not need to be an expert to get the right information out of PHP Vitals. So as well as those 29 tests and the millisecond scores and the exact code that's being run through all of those tests and everything, what you'll see at the end is a grade, and it might be a C or an A plus or an F. And
Yes.
that is based on the ranking that you have against every other test that's been run around the world. So you don't need to know the first thing about how a CPU might be running that throughput of PHP. What you will see in the end is you've got a B or a C or an A or something like that. And if you're a web developer or a website owner or you're running an agency, you don't need to be the person who can fix these things either. What we recommend people do if they do see a problem or they want to understand more, talk to your hosting provider. Because the people who are going to be really, really interested in every single one of those 29 tests and every single millisecond that you measure are the people who are selling you that hardware, right? The people who are in charge of hosting your site. So yeah, as well as providing that deep detail, we also knew that a quick, easy comparison is a really important thing to have here. And because those grades shift over time as more results come in, you know, today's A plus will be next year's maybe B plus, maybe 28 C. But you will see over time how your grades are shifting as well. And it's just a really nice, easy way to know, is your server fast?
Yep. Now let's talk. We just set up the ground for the basic, like why it is important. What are the difference between web providers and the PHP providers? So what kind of steps you can do to improve your PHP providers performance. So now let's talk about. I want to just give the flow to Hasib, and Hasib have lined up some questions which are the part of actionable, and to keep the eyes opening, just to explain and understand the bottlenecks, the disadvantage of not taking care of the PHU vital. So Hasif, some question. Hasif, please go ahead.
Uh, yeah, thank you so much. So my question for you is that what are the most common PHP bottlenecks you see on WordPress sites today?
I don't think there's been a lot of change in the sort of bottlenecks that we see in WordPress over time. And it's things at the front end that are very well known, themes or plugins that are poorly developed or that have way too much functionality and they're just too bloated for the job that you actually want them to do. It's well known that with a theme can slow you down, or not disabling the plugins that you stop using, all those sorts of things. Those are really well understood front end issues. What we want to help people to be able to do is, as well as understanding those, is to sort out or to separate out hosting issues from those front end issues that people understand quite well. So the question is not just why is this slow or is this website slow? It's why is it slow? And should I be spending my time disabling plugins and running again and replacing this theme with a similar looking one? Or do I need to be talking to my host? And so that's why early in your hosting relationship, we recommend plugging in PHP Vitals, running a first test, getting that benchmark so that you can then know what you're constrained by or enabled to achieve, depending how your grade looks, if it's a low one or a high one. And then also when things slow down or if things slow down, when you run your next benchmark from PHP Vitals, you'll be able to see if the change has happened at that infrastructure level, where no amount of changing themes is going to help you, or if it is something at the front end, maybe there is a coding issue, or maybe there is a theme to play with. But I don't think that PHP bottlenecks have changed much over time at all. I think partly it's everyone else is speeding up, whether you are or not. So what counts as a bottleneck is changing. And also just remembering that not as a developer, not everything is within your control. You might just have a CPU that isn't keeping up with what your competing companies or the other companies that you're competing against with what their CPUs are doing for them.
Okay. So can caching fully mask back PHP performance, or does it just delay the pain?
Caching is really important and it's incredibly useful. We recommend you use caching as smartly wherever you can, but also remember that caching is not a complete strategy. This is something we blogged about almost as soon as we released PHP Vitals, because this question comes up a lot, like, oh, if I can just cache, then maybe my server doesn't need to be the first thing I think about, right?
Yeah.
And if your site is entirely static, maybe you're right. But realistically, the way websites work today, you're probably going to have places where your users are interacting with your site and caching isn't going to be able to help you out. So your shopping cart isn't going to be sped up by caching. Anything that writes to the database. So if people are commenting on blog posts or submitting forms or anything like that, then that is going to involve a call to the server, and caching is not going to speed things up. Even if you've got some of your site cached, you need to be thinking about those things, and you need to be remembering that all those interactions, the shopping cart, the form filling in, that's when your users are most engaged with your site, and that's when you want to be at your snappiest and providing the best experience you possibly can. So if you've got this wonderfully cached static content, but then a slow interactive side of your site, you're going to be letting people down at the exact wrong moment. On the other hand, if you think, "Oh, caching probably won't solve me much, I'll just put all my money into hardware," you're going to be missing out on amazing gains that are available from caching as well.
All right. And we also know that the website on any the traffic website is not like always the same. So what you think and how does PHP performance change when a site goes from low traffic to higher one or thanks?
Sure. So when your traffic spikes up, the first thing that's going to happen from your point of view is you will get closer to whatever those limits that constrain you are. So for every piece of hardware in the world, there is a point at which it's going to slow down, right? A traffic spike will get you closer to that point. From a hosting point of view, when traffic spikes, we'll start seeing monitoring alerts. We might start seeing micro outages. We have noticed that when AI crawlers, some AI crawlers at least, hit our customer sites, we'll get micro outages there. For example, if that compounds, you'll end up with timeouts. If you've got a user on the end of one of those timeouts, they're going to start hitting refresh and sending even more calls into that server and making the problem even worse. As a proactive host, or if you have a proactive host, they might start adding resources for you, or they might try to initiate a conversation about that sort of thing. As a developer, that might come through too late, or it might mean that you've got more resources now, and so your builds have changed. When we're talking about traffic spikes, it just basically comes down to when there are more requests coming through every second, when there's more throughput expected of that CPU, um, your CPU is going to have some sort of limit that it reaches. And there are two different ways that you can run your PHP Vitals tests here. You can either wait for a quiet time, run it then, and work out how your server goes at the best of times. Or when your traffic is really high, you can run a test then and get the details on how the real world performance of your server is when you're busy. And that's because those PHP Vitals tests happen as soon as you click the button, no matter what time of day, no matter how many people are hitting your site. So it's a real world example of how your hardware is going. Well, I think that what people really want out of their server is a consistent performance, right? So if you're running those tests at a quiet time and a busy time and your grade is not changing, then you know that whatever limits you're constrained by, you're not getting affected by them in your busy times. Otherwise you might be hearing from your host that your site's down, or they've made a change that you're going to be paying for, or they'd like to at least talk about that.
Okay, as we are going deep in PHP Vitals. So if the site owner just want to improve or the PHP Vitals, so what should be the very first thing they should add, in your opinion?
If you're looking at a low PHP Vitals grade in particular, and so you know that your core web vitals are low because of your server performance, then the first thing you want to be doing is looking at your hosting plan. There's something important there though, which is technical specifications of a VPS won't give you all the information you need. So you might be looking at your hosting or your VPS and thinking, I've got 4 cores. That sounds like quite a lot. What you almost certainly will not be able to find out is, are those 4 cores a CPU from 2019, or are they a brand new CPU that was manufactured this year or last year? So as well as looking at that side of things, I've said it once, I'll say it again. Talk to your host. Let them know, hey, I have run an objective benchmark on PHP performance on the server that you're providing with me. Here are the results. I'd like to discuss them with you and work out how we can improve them. Um, at the very end of the road, obviously, your options include changing the hardware that you're on, which might mean migrating to a larger VPS or changing providers. And it never pays to just check what PHP version you're running as well, in case you've let 7.4 languish for too long or something like that. But yeah, number one thing is understand that the core count or the other specs that you're looking at are hardware dependent, and the people who know what hardware you're actually running on are the ones at your hosting provider. So let them know what you can see.
Yeah. Also, I think we can't ignore the role of developers in any website. Like if we are talking about PHP vitals and we are going deep in this topic, being a human, everyone can do a mistake. Okay, so what mistakes do that developers may made unknowingly, which can hurt the performance of PHP?
I'm going to answer this one from the point of view of a host rather than of a developer. So when we see PHP issues coming, we've reached those points I was talking about before, the micro outages or the monitoring alerts. So things are starting to go off the rails by the time we notice. And one of the main things that will cause those things to start going off the rails will be code that's not optimized and that's repeating things. So whether it's code that's literally in a loop and sending that same operation to the server over and over, or sometimes we'll see code that performs the same operation in multiple places. So, hey, you're hitting the server 6 or 7 times when you could be hitting it once. Obviously, you multiply that out, and suddenly there's a lot of jobs in the queue that don't need to be there. Um, One of the other things we talk to developers about is the hosting that they're on. Is it time to increase the number of cores you've got? Is it time to consider a different piece of hardware, especially if your business is growing well? Maybe you started off as an agency with 3 clients and now you've got dozens or hundreds and you're running larger sites and that sort of thing. If you haven't been increasing your hardware alongside everything else, you're going to find that, yeah, that side of your business isn't kept up with all that wonderful growth you've got on the customer side.
My the very last question for you, Max, is that what you will suggest that how early should teams start thinking about PHP Vital? Rather, should start from the day one or when the problem suddenly occurs.
When a site takes, they need to realize that now this is the time we need to take care of the PHP vitals. Let's go to the host or let's drill down with the developer. Let's bring the retro here.
I think the answer is more, right? Like if you, the sooner you know what you're dealing with, the better. And also, like I've mentioned earlier, things can change over time. So the moment you spin up a new VPS or a new container, whatever it is you're using for your hosting, you don't even need a website. Just the easiest way to run PHP Vitals now is to install WordPress, put that plugin in, and run it. You don't even need a website on the other end of WordPress. Run those tests, get that benchmark on the hardware on day one. And then if it's day 5 or it's day 5,000, when things start going wrong, make sure you got a build up of results over time. And if it's, if things have gone really, really badly all of a sudden, you've got very different information for your host compared to, hey, over the last year, I've seen this slow decline, and so you'll get an idea of what sort of a problem you've got as well. We would love to see as many people using PHP Vitals to run tests as possible. We want to build up that leaderboard. We want to have developers thinking as much about PHP performance as they think about Core Web Vitals in general. And we want to bring more transparency to hosting as well. Like I said, you don't know if those 2 cores you've got are the best cores in the world, or if they're, I don't know. Even AWS has EC2 instances running on 6-year-old hardware, right? If you wouldn't accept, yeah, that's true. And if you wouldn't accept a 6-year-old phone when you start a new job, you don't want to be accepting a 6-year-old server, but plenty of people do. And it's just, we think it's a transparency issue. So yeah, day one, start running those tests, start building up your knowledge of your own hardware and your performance. And if and when things do go wrong, you've got a good data set to be relying on when you start troubleshooting or working with your host on that problem.
Um, uh, yep. I think Hasib has done their part of the question. So I think, yep. I think Hasib, do you want to ask or jump into with any other stuff?
No,
Or
no.
you want me to? Okay, okay. Oh, all right. Max, I have really exciting stuff because you talk about you need to, whenever things goes wrong, you need to check with your host, the code they're providing, or maybe you might need to change your hosting plan. But when we just let's talk about like you are a hosting provider, right? Uh,
Yes.
I bought some kind of plan for my agency or maybe some kind of a customers or maybe stakeholders, whatever it would be. So I'm coming up with a complaint like I have my developer who built the website according to the best coding tips and tricks, follow each and everything. But most of the time, it comes again from the from the support or maybe the PO side, platform ops side, that there's something wrong with the plugin, or maybe there's some devalued code written on your website, right? But most of the time, we understand because we have been into the hosting business for a very long time. We work together at Cloudways, and now we are into again, but I work with a meta service company as well. So we have seen this because we have to realize, and you talk about the transparency, which is very, nobody talks about it. So we need to convey the same kind of messaging, and need to propagate like what's the actual problem. If there's some kind of issue from the server side, we need to explain that thing to the customer. But on the other side,
Yes.
there's a challenge that the customer doesn't understand. Like it takes time for them to understand because most of the e-commerce merchants, because I have worked around with Magento a lot, right? So
Yes.
there are people who are not really into not really tech savvy, but we need to make them understand like this is the actual problem, and this is the only way you need to uh, you know uh, mitigate or cope up with this situation. So in that manner, just out of the box question, so how your support team, or maybe you, if you just have a chat with the customer or maybe on the community or on the email or whatever it is,
Yeah.
so how do you deal with that?
I've got two different answers to that question. And the first one is that what you want to be able to do is separate out the possible causes of issues and eliminate them one by one, right? So the PHP Vitals plugin separates out hardware. And if you run that and that score is low, you know that it's a problem that the developer is not responsible for. On the other hand, you have a more tricky conversation with your customer if they're saying, "My site's really slow," and you run the test and you realize the hardware's an A plus here. So there's something above the hardware level that we need to discuss. Uh, that doesn't always get the host off the hook. It might be the PHP version or another piece of software that's managed by the hosting provider. So I'm not saying that every time the grade comes through nice and high that it's definitely time to point the finger at your client or anything like that, but it does at least let you know not to point the finger into the data center. Um, my second response there is we do sometimes forget about Moore's law. And we do sometimes, especially as troubleshooters and problem solvers and tech heads, when something's not right, we want to solve it and we'll spend hours of time finding that looping code or eliminating causes and not finding that other cause for, hours or for days. Sometimes we forget, you know what you can do? You can just upgrade your hardware anyway, because even bad code will run faster. And if you look at hardware prices, maybe OpenAI have caused a bit of a problem with Moore's law in terms of prices lately. But in general, newer hardware is not a lot more expensive than older hardware, but it is a hell of a lot faster. So, what would you rather do? Spend a week with a development team troubleshooting a massive code base, or spend a similar amount of money on a faster server and speed up whatever code you've got anyway. And I think sometimes that sounds like the lazy answer to people, or it sounds like a, a cheap way to, or not the right way to solve the problem. But man, if it works and if it's fast, and if the trade off is right, why wouldn't you?
100%, 100%. So, yep. Now, let's talk about the tool that you guys have developed, right? And I just want to know, is it the tool free? How the person can look for the tool? Like, is it available online? Do you want or the WordPress people need to install it as a plugin? Or what if what about the Magento user? What about the people who develop their website on Django or any other CMS platform? So,
S-
talk about.
We we are in the WordPress plugin directory now. Just search for PHP Vitals and you'll find us. There's also phpvitals.com where we have the leaderboard and all the other data from around the world that anyone can see. When you run your test, it's up to you whether you submit that data or not. So the leaderboard is something that we're building separately. It's an opt-in thing. If you're running anything else that's PHP based and you want PHP Vitals to run, the first thing I would do is email us, support@phpvitals.com. We're really keen to know who wants to run this. We've got a very smart team of developers who can help you out super fast. The WordPress plugin is step one of what we see as something that's going to get a lot of different ways into a lot of different servers, depending on what you're running. And we'd just love to hear, as well as who wants to run it, from those who are running it. What features would you like to see? How can we make this data more useful to you? If you did take that data to a hosting provider, how does that conversation go, and what did they ask that perhaps we could help you answer as well? We're really, really keen to hear from PHP developers out there. We're really keen to know how we can help you identify how your performance is going and help improve it. If it's fast, make it faster. If it's slow, make it acceptable. Wherever you're starting from, we want to help you out. Yeah, we want to see as many developers willing and able to use PHP Vitals as possible.
I'm really hopeful after the launch of this podcast, a lot of people would be jumping into your PHP Vitals platform, and they would love to try because we have around 8 to 10,000 community user who was like working on WordPress site. Like most 70 to 80% of our users are on WordPress. And
Yeah,
with your answer, I understand like the people who have who's running the architecture on PHP, they might be able to run the PHP Vitals test performance with the help of your platform, right?
yeah. So we started with WordPress because it's so popular, but those exact same tests will work, on any PHP based system. So we're really happy to know where we should go next and who we should help out next. And hopefully we'll get so many people going to phpvitals.com that I'll see some monitoring alerts coming in soon. Maybe some micro outages we can just solve. That'd be great.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. One last important thing from my side related to this topic. So, what kind of things you are working on to make it mainstream as compared to web core vitals? Because a lot of people talk about web core vitals, digital marketers, web developers, like everything just because before that, like people, most of the searches are on this like 1 year ago before the LLM, right? People just directly search everything on Google, right? And they try to rank their website on Google. But now things have changed, drastically changed. Google searches are down as compared to Stack Overflow is nowhere around. Everybody talks about LLM. They go and search their query on LLMs. So the point is like, what kind of strategy you are working on to make it mainstream and allowing and making more virality, bringing the more virality and awareness that they like people need to use the PHP URL for their core performance for their website.
Yeah, that's a really good question. From our point of view, what we're aiming to do is get to the point where developers who have never met before will understand each other when they say, I'm running on a B plus from PHP Vitals. We want to get to the point where those grades are recognized amongst developers as an objective measure of the hardware they're running on. We'd also, and for me, something that'd be fantastic to see is web hosts, our own competition, boasting about the scores they've got. If you see perhaps customer reviews alongside a PHP Vital score on a homepage from a competing web host, I would love to see that sort of thing as well. What we're doing now is tapping into the developer networks that we've built as a hosting company. Working with PHP developers to just find out what they'd like to see next. The next few things we're going to build in are a direct response to feedback from users. So when you look at the leaderboard right now, you see where a server is and who's providing it. Like I said, we've started collecting data that will make that information much, much more useful. We'll ask people before they submit their results to categorize their hosting. Are you on a VPS or a dedicated server or something else? And also to put it in a price bracket as well, because we all know that, you know, there's a difference between an $8 a month hosting package and an $8,000 a month,
Right.
dedicated server. So,
Absolutely.
so we want to make sure that those comparisons are coming in a fair way as well. Yeah, it's all about being developer focused. It's not about singing from the rooftops so that perhaps your website users know that they're on a PHP Vitals B plus. They don't care. They want your shopping cart to sell them products, right? As a developer, though, you care deeply. We hope that one day every developer will care really deeply about their PHP Vitals score, like they do about their core web vitals.
Yeah.
So for us, working closely with developers, making sure that it's useful to them, and hopefully getting to the point where an A plus is something to boast about on Reddit or social media or wherever it is that you're talking about development with your community.
Yep. I think not only for developers, after the vibe coding kind of there's a lot of hype around vibe coding. Like I think that everybody should know about the PHP vital and the usage of like the importance, like why they need to use it, especially the hosting companies. That was our main target. Like why hosting companies are ignoring them and why they are not talking about that. So I was
Mm.
really when we initially discussed about this idea, I was really keen to know what kind of what was the actual background and what kind of the architecture that or what kind of a problem that you faced initially and that made you develop this plugin. So really cool initiative and we at CyberPanel would love to support. I have we'll share this with our community as well. And thank you so much for all the information. Is there anything before we wrap up? Is there anything that you would like to share for our audience? Because there would be one more fun question, which is not related to the topic. But before we jump into that particular question, I just want to ask: is there anything that you would specifically like to highlight about the PHP writers, or anything that you would like to advise to our newbies or developers or the hosting companies? Anything. The floor is yours.
The one thing I'd like to highlight is that hosting has not been the most transparent industry. It can be very hard because if we want to be able to upgrade servers over time, we don't necessarily have the ability to exactly advertise what exactly you'll be on if you buy this hosting package. What that sometimes means is you just see one core, $30 is what you're going to sign up for. We want developers to understand that the transparency issue exists and that PHP Vitals can help solve it. That's our number one thing. And before we wrap up, another plug for phpvitals.com, where you can get the link to download the plugin, read more about PHP performance, get in touch with us about what you'd like to see the plugin do next or what platforms you'd like it to be working through next as well.
Oh, absolutely. And I think I'm really hopeful that you are really engaged on, like, very active on LinkedIn as well. So if somebody wants to talk to you regarding PHP writers or anything else, um, can easily reach out to Max on LinkedIn, right? Max, is that possible?
You can find me there, Max Johns, Johns, or you can also find WebSlice, the developer of PHP Vitals. That's our hosting brand. You can find WebSlice on LinkedIn as well. And yeah, we would absolutely love to hear from you.
Absolutely right. One last thing, apart from it was wonderful talking on the PHP vitals and why this actually matters. Thank you so much for the insightful conversation, Max. All right, it's been a while you haven't visited Pakistan. So are you missing Karachi's biryani? And can you please share one verdict or any sentence or the paragraph or the story about the Karachi biryani?
So for those who aren't aware, when I worked for Cloudways, twice a year I'd fly over to Karachi and I'd spend a week there. And I absolutely love food from that part of the world. But when I'm there, all the guys in the office like Ashmal are like, "Oh, the guy from the Western world is here. Let's have burgers." And so every lunch during the week will be burgers or fries or this sort of thing. And then biryani Fridays would come around, and I still miss them so much.
And
And
today's
so I was always absolutely amazed at the number of gifts and things I'd be given when I would fly out or before I'd fly out on a Friday or a Saturday. And I brought home, I think 6 canned biryani, and I was thinking, "This won't be as good as the fresh stuff." But I brought it home. The first thing my wife said when she tried it is, "When are you going back to Karachi?" All we wanted was more of that.
uh,
I have great memories of those trips. It was unlike anything else I've done, and just the welcome I got from everyone there and the experience of being in such an incredibly busy office, and obviously a city unlike any other in the world, and especially no city in New Zealand is anything like Karachi. Absolutely amazing times.
yeah, I remember you were like, we were walking on the street and there were a bunch of wires on the street on the like the pole or something, and we were taking the picture. Oh my God, I've never seen. And I was like, "I'm really, really? He's going to take the picture and like post on this. Maybe he never put it on the social media platform, but you know, I was surprised. Like Okay. Let him
But
do
all
it.
of that was different. All of that was different though, right? If you came and visited me here, there'd be things that you'd look
Yeah.
at and think, "That's unusual," and I wouldn't even notice it.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Max, once again. And whenever you visit Karachi, especially like Pakistan, any city, let us know and let us get the chance to host you one more time. And it will be a great honor for us. And yep, I think this time to wrap up from our side. Thank you so much, Max. Once again, I really hope that our audience will.
So
Yep, yep, yep. Sorry, go ahead, please.
I just want to say, I hope I'll see you in New Zealand sometime as well. Our door is always
For
open.
sure. For sure, for sure. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Max. Take care of yourself. All right. Bye, guys.